to first to file, because I really think that it's important, and if you don't mind us talking about it, patent searching. I can't tell you, Gene, how many inventors are involved with the radio show or I speak to personally, in my inventors groups. They're telling me that they came up with an idea and they filed a provisional patent, or they filed a non-provisional patent. They have prototypes, marketing plans, everything else, and they didn't do the one simple step, in my opinion, which is probably one of the most important ones, is do a patent search. What's your take on that, Gene?
I couldn't agree more. I'll tell you, if somebody comes to me for legal work and they don't want to do a patent search, I put into the representation agreement that they were advised to have a search done and declined. Because there's really no way to have any idea as to the likelihood of getting a patent in the vast majority of cases if you don't do a search. Now, sure, if somebody comes up with something and, I operate in this space and I can look at it and say, I've seen a lot of things very similar to that. I don't think you're likely. I mean, that's fair. I mean, that's a fair initial question for any inventor to ask a patent attorney or patent agent. But once you get past, I haven't seen anything like this, I don't have, as an attorney, any way to know what we're going to focus on. Because I'm sure as an inventor, there will be bits and pieces of that invention that are going to contribute far more significantly to patentability. And you simply can't know which of those pieces they are without understanding what the state of the prior art is. The other thing is when you describe things not knowing what the prior art is, you describe everything as if it's equally important when we know that's not the case.
Gene, I'm telling you, it seems like there's... I mean, the mindset is that we're trying to do this with at least amount of money out of pocket as possible. But at the same time, you're moving to the steps beyond where you should, when you should focus on the intellectual property, the patent search. Now, it all depends, okay? If you're getting some general idea, and I'm sure it can go in many different directions, but would you say, Gene, that it's worth, if you come up with an idea, is it worth it to go through the patent process or to just try to get it out there and don't look back?
It really depends upon what it is that you've come up with, I think. And that's a real hard question to answer, generally speaking. I mean, I think what you have to remember about the patent at the end of the road, if you're going to go down this road, is it's an asset. It's a business tool to accomplish something. So what I always try and get people to think about is having something of like a business plan or a game plan. What is it that you hope to accomplish with what it is you're doing? And there's any like in painting, if you go to art museums and you see painting, there's a style. Van Gogh has one style, Picasso has another, and both of them are priceless. There's a lot of different ways to get from point A to point B, and I wouldn't say none of them wrong, but there's a whole bunch of them that are just as good as any other. Like, one question is, do you do a patent search before you have a prototype or before you have any kind of proof of concept?
I do.
And I typically suggest people do, but I know you probably know Leo Mazur, the president of the South Florida group. Mm-hmm. He likes to tell people maybe get some kind of a proof of concept before, and it goes back to where you started. The question is you're going to have a certain limited number of funds available. How do you go about spending that money? So you got to give that some thought. And I don't know that you always jump to the patent search first, because maybe you come up with something that strikes you as, wow, this would be really cool, but I'm not sure I could even pull it off. Well, maybe you go out into your garage and you start tinkering. And then you start to realize, hey, I think I can pull this off. Well, now you've got to start thinking, I got to continue down this path, but while I'm going down this path, maybe I ought to look and see what else is out there to see whether it continues to make sense to spend time and energy.
Yep. Gene,
so you have to wear a lot of hats.
Yep. I look at it, when I come up with an idea, I let it kind of sit for a little bit, and explore in my mind and think about it and go online and just do a simple search, see what's out there, describe my idea on the on the web, and just get a general idea if it's something that exists. I go on uspto.gov and I go on the patent search area there, and I kind of dabble a little bit. I'm not a professional, even though I have a decent amount of patents under my belt. I still am not a professional. That's not what I do for a living, so I leave it to the experts. And the way I look at when I come up with an idea, Gene, I look at it like I'm starting a business. So if I'm looking at my idea, is it something that's already existing? Am I opening up a restaurant of some authentic food, and right next door is another restaurant, the same thing with authentic food? Does that make sense? Is that a right business decision to start putting money, time, resources into? And I think that's a question that a lot of people need to answer. Before you start building the building, you want to build the foundation. So build it from the point. And again, Gene, everybody has different perspectives on it, different opinions, different journeys that they take. It's exciting to see something live in front of you and then go backwards. As long as you don't spend, if you're spending $1,000 on a prototype, well, these days with 3D printing, you could do it much less, but you could spend a little bit and then go back and then do a search. I mean, just try to budget your money that's going to be able to take you to the point of trying to get some intellectual property. And the people that are trying to get the intellectual property may possibly be to hang up on their wall and have a nice patent on their wall, or is it something that they want to try to license? When you're trying to license to some of the larger companies or any company, what are they really licensing from you? Well, if it's just an idea, well, they can do it themselves. They don't really need you, right? If you have some sort of intellectual property, it's an asset that they're going to rent from you and give you a royalty for a certain amount of time. Right, Gene?
Yeah. No, I think everything you just said is correct. And one of the key things you brought up is the budget. And that is one of the reasons why it's difficult to give a general answer to say, well, you got to do this first, you got to do that first. There's different approaches. And I think, like you mentioned, you do some searching yourself. I think that's a great idea as long as the inventors don't think that they're going to do a professional level search. Now, if the inventor can find what it is that they've come up with, then they just save themselves not only time but money, and they can move on to what's next. But now, just because they didn't find it doesn't mean that it can't be found. So now you then take it to the next threshold. So I always try and tell people is you got to have a plan to get from here to where you want to go, and do it in increments that, one, you can bite off in terms of time investment, and then two, in increments that you can bite off in terms of financial investment. And you want to do it in a responsible way, knowing that at some point in time, if the invention is going to continue to go forward and look fruitful, there will be some significant expenses.
Okay.
But you don't want to do it, spend that significant money, until you have some reason to believe it's worthwhile investment.
Right.
That's the big mistake. People rush straight there and try and circumvent the early steps, and they waste money.
I have a question that came in. I'm going to interpret it in my own way. Thank you for your question, Tom. So, Gene, there's people that do a patent search by going on to Walmart website and checking if the product exists on Walmart, and if it doesn't, they're moving to step B. And then there's other people that have a little bit more of a level and go on uspto.gov and search around and spend time to go through other resources. But then there's the other side where you can go to a professional. So maybe you can just tell us step by step, not so much too detailed, but just generally, if you don't mind, what it takes to actually do a patent search that's relevant.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great question, because a few years ago, I would not have even really talked very long about doing an internet product search, whether it's, you go to Walmart or you Google or Amazon or wherever you want to go, or probably all of those places. And I preached patent search, because I used to hear so often from people is, well, I know it doesn't exist because I wanted to buy one and I couldn't. And then over the last couple of years, I've started getting people asking me questions and so forth, and it was clear to me that they had never done a product search. Because if you had just typed in a few relevant keywords into Google, you would have found that, well, this already exists. So you have to, I think, one, start with Google, Walmart, Amazon, Yahoo, Bing, whatever you want to do, and see what is out there that is available. Because that's typically going to be the easiest search to do, right? Because those people that are selling these things have a vested interest in making it easy to find online.
Right, but then they say, but it's kind of like my idea, but not really. So what is that limit of saying, you know what, I have to move on? Or am I going to continue because that one goes up and down and mine twists and turns?
Right. Now, it's impossible in any kind of just a basic discussion like this to give the legal answer as to whether or not you're going to be able to get a patent. How different does it have to be?
Sure.
And that's fine, because the far more relevant question is the business question. Is, would somebody pay a premium for your version versus what they can already get? Because if you're going to go down this path, do a patent search and get a patent and pay patent fees, you're going to have money invested that you have to figure out how to recoup, which means that typically with your patented product, you've got to charge more than what others who don't have patented products, because you've just spent more. So the question people have to ask is what I come up with enough of an advantage so that people would pay more for mine? Now, if mine twists rather than turns, will people see a turning one widget, whatever it is, as a substitute? Because if it's an adequate substitute, they're going to go there, and they're not going to buy mine.
Right. It has
so
to.
One of the things you're trying to find, hopefully, is if your invention is an improvement, a significant enough improvement, so that new buyers would want yours, and so that certain people who already own the other piece would be willing to pay for yours.
And that's the $1 million question. That's why you need to do a patent search. And so if you are going to a patent attorney or a patent agent or a company that does patent searches, I've heard a few different things, and there were some questions before the show that came in, Gene, and I'm trying to also interpret them. You know, some people prefer independent patent search firms and then take what they find and bring it to their patent attorney or agent to review. Then there's others that say, if I get a patent search done and I'm using the same guy to do my patent, of course they're going to figure out and say, yes, it's patentable, because they want to do the patent filing. So people have different perspectives on it. Obviously, everybody should have the right intentions, and people should have peace of mind. But what do you think, Gene? How can we have a good, solid foundation to know that, is it patentable, is it not patentable? Because once we start, we're in that process for, 18 months, a couple years, whatever it is, and you start to get really emotionally attached, and you're going through the process, making prototypes, seeing people, going to trade shows, and it's something as simple as, again, we're back to step one, seeing if that idea is actually ours, because you bring it to a big company, they end up doing their own patent search, and they say, let me see what you filed and what you found, and let's see what we found. Is this somebody else's idea, or is this yours? Sorry, next.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know exactly where to start there, because, I understand inventors are skeptical, and with good reason. So I want to start there, and there are some less than, how do I want to even say this? There are some unfortunately shady characters in the invention community.
In any community, Gene.
In any community.
The most important thing that we always preach.
And particularly so in the invention community, for two reasons. One, there's money to be made from inventions. And two, there's money to be made lying to people,
Well, it's
telling them